Hi everyone, and welcome here to Teaching Tuesday. As you know, on Tuesdays we have been alternating between teaching and testimonies. In teaching, we've had people come and share what God has been teaching them. We've been hearing from Scripture, these short devotions that we hope are encouraging to you. And on testimonies, we've seen into people's homes, literally, to hear about how God has been at work in their lives. And from both the teaching and testimonies, we hope that you have been encouraged by all that. I'm thankful for the opportunity that I have to share with you today. So today I'll be sharing from a passage of Scripture that I've been reflecting on quite a bit in the last few weeks. This is a passage that has meant a lot to me, and even though I'm reading other passages as well each day, I find myself coming back to this one for peace and reassurance and comfort. Recently I've been reading through the Psalms, and I found a lot of hope, peace, and joy in those words. And in particular, Psalm 139 has become important to me over the last few weeks. And I, as I said, have been finding myself coming back to this, especially when I feel a little bit unstable or anxious or uncertain. Because like many of you, this season we're in, this COVID-19 has brought uncertainty and to some degree anxiety into my life. And as I think about the future, as I think about plans that I was hoping to make and put into motion over the next few months and years, everything feels a little bit more uncertain. We don't know where all of this is leading. And so, like many of you, I'm simply learning what it means to wait during the season, what it means to let it unfold, how it will unfold, and to trust God in the process. And really, for me, that's a process of learning and also relearning what it means to trust God during seasons of uncertainty. And so today I want to share from Psalm 139. I'm going to read most of the passage here for us and then quickly talk about it. So Psalm 139, beginning in verse 1. You have searched me, Lord, and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You are familiar with all my ways. Before a word is on my tongue, you, Lord, know it completely. You hem me in behind and before, and you lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too lofty for me to attain. Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me, your right hand will hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness will hide me and light become night around me, even the darkness will not be dark to you, for darkness is as light to you. For you created me, my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book, before one of them came to be. How precious to me are your thoughts, God. How vast is the sum of them. Were I to count them, they would outnumber the grains of sand. When I awake, I am still with you. Now, in this passage, which was written by David, we read about the personal, intimate relationship that David has with God. We read about this knowledge, this awareness that David has that God is with him. And so in this passage, David reminds us that God knows us more deeply and fully than anyone else, and frankly, more deeply and fully than we even know ourselves. And for me, as I've looked into this passage more and more over the last few weeks, I found a lot of peace in these words. And so today, briefly, I want to reflect on three sections from this passage: the past, the present, and the future. This isn't necessarily in order, but in my mind, I see three sections here. One where David talks about the past, one where he talks about the present, and one where he talks about the future. So first, the past. Well, in verses 13 to 16, which begins with that famous verse, you created me in my inmost being. You created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. In these verses, we read that God knew us before we were born. He created us with intentionality, with design, and with purpose. And he knew us before anyone else. In verse 16, I love what he says. David says, all the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. Simply put, that means that God knows exactly what we are experiencing because he knew each day of our lives before we would live them. He knew the good days that we've experienced in our lives. He knew the hard days that we have experienced and maybe are experiencing right now. And not just in some general, we all go through good times and hard times type way. He knows each day second by second. And for me, knowing that in the past, before I was born, God knew everything I would walk through, each moment of my life, that has brought me a lot of peace. Because if he knows what's going to happen, then if I stay connected to him, he'll guide me. The present. In verses 1 to 6, right at the beginning, we are reminded that God is present in our daily circumstances, both in our inner thoughts and in our outward lives, in our actions. He is always with us in our everyday lives. In Psalm 139, David writes, you have searched me and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. This is current. This is present. God is with us. He doesn't just have foreknowledge of what was to happen. He is actually here with us each day. And that means that God knows exactly what we are experiencing. And it means that we can be invited to practice his presence. That's the way that Brother Lawrence in a famous book put it. Practice the presence of God. These verses remind us that there is not anything we can experience in our lives where God is not with us. He is with us in our thoughts, and he is with us each day of our lives, no matter what we are walking through. And then the last section is future, and this is verses 7 to 12. David asks a number of rhetorical questions to remind us that in addition to knowing that God knew us before we were created, and in addition to knowing that God is with us, he is present each moment of our lives, we are also reminded that God will always be with us, no matter what happens. He asks, well, where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee? If I go up to the heavens, you're there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I settle on the wings of the dawn, if I go to the far side of the sea. In other words, no matter where we go, what we do, wherever we end up in our lives, both in a physical and geographical sense, but also in an emotional and a spiritual, internal sense, we're reminded that God is always going to be with us. There's nowhere we can go that's apart from his presence, apart from his spirit. And to me, knowing that first, God knew me before I was born, second, that he's with me every day, and third, he promises to always be with me no matter what happens and where I go, for me, this has brought a lot of peace. The way that David puts it is that God is with us, and to use his words, his right hand will hold us fast. I love this passage of scripture. I love the peace and comfort that these words and these themes bring into our lives. And so I would encourage you to spend some time with it in the next few days. Read it. Read that section of scripture more than once and more than one day in a row. Let it sink in. This idea that God is always with us. It's a simple idea, but it is so profound. And I love the last verse that we read at the end of verse 18. It says, when I awake, I am still with you. Whatever you're waking into these days, whether you're waking into a really good season of rest and peace, or you're waking into a season of busyness and chaos, or waking into a season of depression and anxiety, whatever you're waking into, he is still with us. Love you guys. Hope you're all doing well.